Luke Skywalker, one of, if not the most iconic character in Star Wars. In a previous episode, I talked about the belief that Luke was an optimistic character was false, and as promised, I wanted to talk about it. At first, I didn't really know where people were getting this idea from, but then when I realized people were using the clip of Mark Hamill stating that the Luke from The Last Jedi wasn't his Luke because it wasn't the same optimistic hero he was in the original trilogy, as another reason to dislike the sequel trilogy, because they believe this means Disney/Lucasfilm is ruining the character of Luke Skywalker by changing his personality. And at first, this seems reasonable. How could anyone deny Mark Hamill's opinion? Shouldn't he, of anyone, know what kind of personality his character had? Maybe, unless someone like me would make the outrageous claim that he could possibly be wrong himself. Not that I'm arrogant enough to think that I know more than the actor who is blessed enough to be a part of the Star Wars story, but I don't see why it would at all be wrong to suggest that he could possibly be confusing one word for another, a word that at face value looks almost identical to optimism, but has vastly different meanings when you get to the root of what the word actually means. Before I get to that word, let's just break down the argument first. Luke as an optimistic character. I mean, are you kidding me? By all means, name me a point in Luke's original trilogy arc that would suggest he was always an optimistic character, when we can just watch the movies and know that's never really a trait of his, as the following will show.
Tell Uncle if he gets a translator, be sure it speaks Bocce.
Doesn't look like we have much of a choice. The R2 unit has a bad motivator, look. It just isn't fair. Oh, Biggs is right. I'm never gonna get out of here. Oh, not unless you can alter time, speed up the harvest, or teleport me off this rock.
But it's a whole nother year.
Look, it's only one more season.
Yeah, that's what she said when Biggs and Tank met.
Where are you going?
Looks like I'm going nowhere.
Boy, am I gonna get it. You know, that little droid's gonna cause me a lot of trouble.
I'm not going to Alderaan. I'm ready to get home. It's late. I'm in for it as it is. Listen, I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it, but there's nothing I can do about it right now.
If they trace the robots here, they may have learned who they sold them to, and that would lead them back home.
There's nothing for me here now. I can't understand how we got by those troops. I thought we were dead. Do you really think we're gonna find a pilot here that'll take us to Alderaan? What a piece of junk! Why didn't you outrun him? I thought you said this thing was fast.
You kidding? They're right there gaining?
What's that flashing?
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight? There's a very bad feeling about this.
Now, the first and only real thing that people tend to bring up to make this excuse is that, what about the hope to bring back Vader to the light? That's clearly optimism. Okay, let's say for all intents and purposes, that is the case. Luke believing he can bring Vader back to the light is 100% optimism. Do you see the problem? That arc of his story only appears in the last half of his third film. And even then, at times, he still gives up when he's not given immediate results, as he's done throughout his entire story.
He is your master now.
Then my father is truly dead.
I would even be willing to challenge for every one time people can find of him being optimistic about something, he has about 3 moments being otherwise. So what is it? What can it be called? Simple. Faith. As I said, at face value, these two words sound very similar, but they have vastly different outlooks and standards. Let's say you have a priest. Would he prefer to hear a member of his flock was faithful to his religion's beliefs, or optimistic? Even when you say it like that, you can hear the difference. Why? Because optimism implies doubt. Doubt based on evidence. It's the choice to believe in something despite whatever evidence that might contradict it, where faith doesn't really require that. You can have faith about anything with as little or as much evidence as you can find. To also be called always optimistic implies a consistent track record of being so, while faith is a lot more selective. A person can be faithful about one specific thing and still be referred to as faithful to that subject. Like how Luke is towards Vader's redemption. If a person is only optimistic about one thing out of 100 others, you're not granted the rank of always optimistic. Take a seat. And frankly, the more we turn to the word faith, the more it really fits in line with Luke's character than Optimism. Luke starts his story on a spiritual journey where he learns the ways of a mystical and unseen power that holds the galaxy together, and becomes a part of the religious Jedi Order who worship the light side of the Force, where his teachers instill upon him their monk-like beliefs and tradition. He faces the challenges of the conflict between good and evil, choosing to do the right thing even when the greatest evil tempts him with power and personal satisfaction. If you tried to explain the story to anyone who's never heard of Star Wars and just left out the sci-fi parts, it would absolutely sound like a religion, and in a lot of ways, it is. Star Wars teaches fundamental lessons throughout all of their movies that you can find in any religious text on Earth. Personal responsibility, self-sacrifice, standing up for what is right, desiring peace over conflict, the list goes on, which makes it all the more clear that this is what was intended for Luke's character, a story of a lost and questioning person being shown the way of faith that changes his outlook on life. This makes sense because these were the first movies to establish the lore of Star Wars. You need to have a skeptical hero in order to justify the exposition in a natural sounding way. And that's why I think so many people are confused by Luke's character in The Last Jedi, because they believe from their own outlook or Mark Hamill's that this contradicts an optimistic nature he never really had to begin with. Luke had faith he could redeem his father, but to say Luke was optimistic about Vader insinuates that he had evidence to go on to be optimistic about. As I said before, optimism implies doubt based on evidence. What evidence would Luke have to go on from his previous encounter with Vader, which ended with... What doubt is there in that confrontation that gives Luke the idea Vader is not committed to the dark side? Is it the dismembering of his own child, or his offer for Luke to join him in the dark side and rule the galaxy together? And because faith can be towards a singular thing, it's not at all unreasonable to suggest that Luke wouldn't have that same faith towards Kylo. In fact, he tried, but when this accidentally resulted in turning Kylo to the dark side fully, Luke faces his greatest failure that he's ever had to deal with. A failure that destroyed his sister's marriage to his best friend and ultimately tore his family apart. And for a character like Luke with no real history of optimism, it makes sense he would shrink back to a simpler and more recognizable mindset to help him process his grief of being responsible for accidentally destroying what he loved. And I just find it entirely unrealistic to expect anyone who's experienced that kind of trauma to just pick themselves up by their boot heels and carry on like nothing happened. That's never been who Luke was. Luke was a complicated person who needed to fail and sulk before being shown or finding a new way for himself. That's how he's always progressed forward, which is why he ends up coming back around and stands up to the First Order, which he earlier mocked the idea of after Rey challenges his miserable outlook and shows him a different way of thinking. Look, there's a lot of qualities about Luke's character that I think we can all fully agree on. He's courageous, facing the galaxy's worst evils, and even accepting his own death with unshaken bravery. He's stubborn, but kind-hearted, thinking of others without a thought of himself or his own safety. He might not be an optimistic person by nature, but Luke also embodies another trait that's been a part of his character since the first movie that no one can deny: hope, which exceeds either faith or optimism, whatever you want to call it, as his primary character trait. But like faith, hope can be singular. It can also be fragile, but when used in the proper way, it's more powerful than the Force itself, in my opinion. Hope led a young farm boy to learn the ways of the Jedi and toppled an empire. Hope and faith redeemed one of the most evil men in the galaxy. Hope is what inspired countless people, like Poe for example, to follow in Luke's footsteps and stand up against tyranny. And that same hope is rekindled when he arrives on Crait to face his greatest failure and redeem himself for it once and for all. Which is why Luke Skywalker means more to me than any other fictional character I've ever known. In a lot of ways, he's shaped my outlook on life, which shouldn't all be something to be ashamed of just because he's a fictional character. Plenty of real people in this world live fake lives, have fake friends, and show fake feelings for a number of reasons, few of them good, if any. And if it takes a fictional character to show people how to act by behaving like a better person than real people, I'd say that's a far worse show of our real world than the one of fiction. And that's today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked this video, please give me a like. If you want to see more, give me a subscribe. If you'd like to help my channel out any more, I'd appreciate it if you shared any of my videos you enjoyed around, comment, hit that bell notification, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.